Woo, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Sabzu, the rated R radio star, here for the last Patreon episode of April, coming out the last day of April. How about that? We go, but there's some kind of saying that it's like April in like a lamb, out like a lion, or some kind of crap like that. I don't know. Anyway, it's a northeastern thing. It has to do with snow, but we're definitely going out like a lion because, of course, I'm being joined. This is our Star Wars update, one of the most popular things that gets done on Patreon for Sovryn Tech, and I am being joined by Robin Freebeard. Welcome back, man.
Woo! Snuggle bum, oogie woogie.
Yeah. Absolutely. I almost pulled down my portal gun there for a second.
Awesome. Blow shit up.
Yeah. So now if anyone notices, like with my voice, I don't know what the hell's going on. I just had like this weird runny nose over the past few days. I don't understand what the hell it is, but I don't know, maybe I'm allergic to Boston or something. But anyway, that's not that I'm in Boston right now. Yeah, right. I don't know. I'm allergic to cities, I think. But so I like never get sick, but anyway, boy, before we get into the Star Wars topics, I got to ask Rob, I mean, have you today, the Windows 10 April update came out. Did you jump on that at all?
No, I haven't gotten hit with that yet.
Yeah, me neither.
I'm really not really looking forward to it, to be honest with you.
No, I'm sweating it because, man, I'll share the story in like a future Patreon episode, but like that deal that I talked about a couple episodes ago, Sovryn Tech, where like my hard drive died, like it died and it died bad. And I totally blame the update from Microsoft on that. So,
well, I think I told you, I don't remember if it was on social media or somewhere else, but no, it was on the Patreon page. And I was working on a school project and, rendering stuff in Mastercam. And I had the first, BSOD for what must have been years.
Yeah. No, and actually a few other people, I saw that, and a few other people emailed me too and said, oh yeah, like over the weekend, all at the same time. And even like the hotel I was at fucking had all their computers went BSOD. It was crazy. So, well, we'll figure out what's happening with that, but hopefully something that actually has its shit together would be Lucasfilm and Disney. But, well, I don't think we always expect that though.
No, I was going to say, let's see how long that lasts.
Yeah, right. That doesn't last long at all. I get, at some point it would be fun to like put together all the announcements that Kathleen Kennedy's made that have been canceled. Like that are just not happening.
Or cheap plans have changed.
Yeah, right. No Boba Fett movie. I mean, go down the fucking list of them. But anyway, something that did, let's get right into it, Robin. One of the things I thought that was, this is some of the most exciting news you can get when it comes to Star Wars. I mean, next to hearing about a movie that's actually in production is when we get a TV show, or particularly an animated series being run by none other than Dave Filoni, which anytime you hear his name attached to Star Wars, of course, I think everybody gets the warm fuzzies and feeling good.
He is the heir to the empire, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. This is the guy that they need to keep grooming and just like let him, slowly get into it and all this stuff. Real quick, before we talk about Resistance, how do you feel about the idea? Have you heard the theory that he's going to be, so they've got, what's his name there? The guy, Iron Man. The guy they've got doing the TV series.
Yeah. No, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
So it's Josh something, but or I don't know, Fuqua, I don't know, whatever the fuck it is. Anyway, he's making the Star Wars TV show, or he's making a Star Wars TV show. And some people were saying that they expect Filoni to be getting some director's chops with that TV show. I mean, I personally, I expect it. I think it'll happen. I mean, what about you? John Favreau. That's it.
John Favreau. I was just looking that up myself. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I hope he does a movie at some point.
Yeah.
I know television format is kind of his forte, but I think he's definitely ready for the big leagues.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I don't think people, this is something people don't really grasp, like how animation directors, like how hard they work, and I sometimes think it's a little harder to do than even live action directing. So
I agree. Yeah. And it can be just as expensive. I mean,
sure.
One of the reasons that is, kind of speculated for the reasons why they canceled the Clone Wars when Disney took over is just because it was such an expensive production, and George was, willing to throw tons of money at it, but Disney was, making a business decision and said, hey, we're not getting as much back as what we're putting into this, so we're, go
Right.
with the cheap production. Which, I mean,
Yeah.
admittedly, as much as I love Rebels, and I really do, the visual fidelity isn't quite up to what the Clone Wars was.
No, and again, like we talked about in a previous Star Wars update, I mean, it just didn't have the same scale, and that scale is only possible with money.
Yeah.
I mean, Disney was definitely, no pun intended, piloting things with, with testing out Rebels, see how it would do, on Disney XD and all that different stuff. I mean, because
Right.
Clone Wars was on Cartoon Network, right? Wasn't that?
Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. So I mean, they really had to kind of test those waters, and so I get that, and that anyway. Yeah, same here. I love Rebels as well, which is why I'm feeling really good about Star Wars Resistance, having Filoni at the helm, and amazingly, this is coming out this fall. I mean, I knew they were already in production of whatever the next thing was, but wow, that's a fast turnaround time. I mean, you're pretty much getting like Rebels season 5 here.
Yeah, I kind of speculated about it. I don't know if I talked to you about it, but I kind of had the feeling that because they do this stuff like almost a year in advance.
Right.
So by the time that Rebels had wrapped up, production had pretty much been finished for a year already. And so, all the stuff that the interviews and the press stuff that they did at the end there was just kind of like getting the gang back together again.
Sure,
And,
right.
I was actually surprised that they didn't announce the Resistance, earlier, because I had a feeling that they were just going to lead into the next production. Because I wouldn't think they would just let Filoni sit around and do nothing for 6 months.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that it got an announcement now though, just because why not wait till after Solo? That seems to be Hollywood's MO.
Well, it seems to be Disney's MO to do these sort of like these blitzes of announcements and stuff. Because I mean, they, remember, was it 2 months ago? And it was just a dearth of news and coming out of Disney about Star Wars. And I mean,
oh yeah, like the idiots doing a Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it was just all announcement after announcement after announcement. So they do seem to like to pack these announcements together.
Sure. No, that's true. That's true. And I mean, we don't have a whole ton of details about Star Wars Resistance. It does have the animation style, looks to be very anime inspired, which I think is great.
I get the impression that it's probably going to be sort of a cell shaded 3D animation sort of thing, which is cool. I mean, I appreciate that style.
Sure. I mean, if this looks like the recently released, and I reviewed it on Patreon, Batman Ninja, like if it's looking along those lines, I mean, fucking great. Like I love that style. I think it's beautiful. So I'm good for that. Even and isn't the characters Asian, right? Like, or Asian influence, the Kazuda Shiano or something like that?
Well, they did a casting announcement recently, and there were some Asian actors in there, but I don't think they really. I haven't heard anything about who the main characters are or who the main cast members are.
Yeah, I know the main character is this pilot, this ace pilot named Kazuda, and Kazuda sounds, I mean, that has, Japanese flair to it, perhaps.
Yeah.
So maybe they're going all the way with that, which, hey, rock and roll. I mean, I think that's fine. So that's really, as far as I saw, that was the only new character that got announced, but they did say we're going to get BB-8s in it. Poe Dameron being voiced by, what's his name? Wow, it's terrible. Having a terrible day with names. Oscar
Isaac.
Oscar Isaac. That Poe Dameron will be in it, and so then I mean that gives us time frame, and of course with the name Resistance, it is taking place before the Force Awakens, and we will get more Captain Phasma with Gwendolyn Christie.
Yeah, and I think I remember reading somewhere they were talking to Filoni about it, and he said that it was kind of inspired by the World War II sort of era of pilots and test pilots for new planes and things like that.
Yeah, actually, I got the quote from him right here. I'll read it quick. The idea for Star Wars Resistance came out of my interest in World War II aircraft and fighter pilots. My grandfather was a pilot, and my uncle flew and restored planes, so that's been a big influence on me. There's a long history of high-speed racing in Star Wars, and I think we've captured that sense of excitement in an anime-inspired style, which is something the entire team has been wanting to do for a long time. So,
yeah, that sounds cool. Good. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm pretty. It's funny enough. what he's talking about kind of reminds me uh, of an old Disney cartoon, from when we were kids back in the 90s,
Hmm.
during, that golden era of Disney
Are you
television
going to
with
say
DuckTales.
Tailspin?
That's exactly, yep. It
Yeah.
reminds me of Tailspin.
Yeah, good call with Blue and all that. That was like based
Right,
off of the Jungle Book. I remember that.
right. And just
Oh
kind of
no.
like that little graphic they showed, kind of like almost kind of evoked that feeling.
Yeah, because that did have a World War II feel, and like you had the villain was Don Carnage and all that. Yeah.
Right, right. And I'm kind of hoping maybe there'll be like space pirates and stuff like that, and
Oh,
it
I
won't
would
just
dig
be the
that.
First Order.
Yeah, I would dig that. Even though like some of the plot details have been pointing at that like this character of Kazuda is investigating what the First Order is doing. I think personally, I think it's great to get more Captain Phasma. I am like 100% on board with that. That might be the best thing that they've said so
Right.
as far as this show goes. But I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I just hope they finally do the character justice. I
Yeah,
really
there you
think
go.
she's been sort of underserved. I think one of the best scenes with Captain Phasma we had was from a deleted scene from The Last Jedi.
Right. Yeah,
You
which we
know,
talked about in the last update, where
right,
the one with John Boyega, where
right.
Finn
So
like
if you haven't seen that, go check it out, because I mean that is really. I mean, I kind of scratched my head as to why they decided to cut that scene, because it was really good.
yeah, it's hilarious. Like it was funny and perfect and had great character development, like all in
Right.
one. It's a perfect scene. It's such a shame that it wasn't there. I expect, yeah, I want the same thing. I want some character development for Captain Phasma because they've pushed that character so hard and we've gotten very little payoff, if any. And I wouldn't mind some Maz Kanata. I would take that,
Yeah.
if they
Yeah.
want to explore some of these other characters that were in The Force Awakens and maybe some of what's in The Last Jedi. I mean, certainly the comic book of Poe Dameron has been doing a pretty good job of exploring a lot of that. And
Right.
finally, with that, we're getting past The Last Jedi. So I don't know. Like, what's your overall thought? Are you feeling bullish about this? I mean, are you feeling good about
No, I'm really
Resistance?
excited. I mean, anything that Dave Filoni does, I'm going to be on board with. Pretty much. I mean, he'd really have to try hard to screw the pooch
Yeah,
on
right,
this
right.
one.
With him,
I
you
mean,
think
like,
it's harder to fail.
yeah, exactly. Right, right. He'd actually have to try to fail.
Yeah. Yeah, no, same. I feel I'm really excited about this show. I think that I mean, I'm glad that we don't have to go too long without Star Wars on TV because I've kind of gotten used to that now, which is
Yeah,
hard to believe.
I've been kind of coming down off of Rebels. Like, I miss it. I miss having that you know kind of series on television.
Yeah, getting like a weekly fix of Star Wars. I mean, not that we
Right,
have, we're not lacking for movies at the moment, but shit, like I don't know. It's amazing how spoiled we get so quickly because
right,
the idea of Star Wars on TV was fucking ridiculous 20 years ago. Like,
right.
who the hell would have, I mean, you just would have said, no, you can't do that. Like that's not even possible. And animated or otherwise, we wouldn't have thought it. But I mean, granted, there were animated series in the 80s. I know that, but
Right. Yeah, you got the
still,
droids cartoon.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah, Resistance. I think this is going to be. I'm hopeful. I don't know. I can't tell anything from it how, like, what the demographic that they're shooting for is. I can.
Well, that with
Go ahead.
him, that always changes over time.
Yeah,
I mean, he always starts off with sort of, like trying to introduce the show to kids, and then he kind of expects the audience to grow up along the way.
yeah. I mean, and this is the thing. I'm actually kind of expecting this with Star Wars shows, or at least animated series, is
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to go on like, I don't know. It's almost like putting kids through, I don't know, elementary school or something.
Yeah,
Like
which
first,
I mean that's fine. That's a noble goal in my
sure,
opinion.
sure. But I think it's also going to limit shows from going much past 4 or 5 seasons because what they're going to say is like, okay,
Right.
everybody that was 10 is 15 now. So let's reboot. And now all the new 10-year-olds can jump on it. I mean, it's just this continual like demographic marketing machine that
Yeah, and
I'm
that
worried
is, I
can
mean,
limit things, but go ahead.
yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, it's kind of like it's a double-edged sword, because on one
Sure.
hand, yeah, you have the shorter timeline in terms of the number of seasons you get, but at the same time, it's continually getting refreshed. We're getting new content, something that is a little more divergent from what we got
Sure.
before. Because I
Sure.
mean, like, Rebels was not Clone Wars, and I'm sure Resistance is not going to be Rebels. But even though there's been kind of like elements that have flowed through each one of these, and I'm
Yeah, there's been
expecting
some
the same
synergy.
sort of things where there's going to be like that same synergy between, Rebels and Resistance, and maybe even with Clone Wars too.
Sure. Yeah. No, I can see that. And again, yeah, I don't have too much of a problem with it, I guess, because at the same time, like if they get to, just continually build up from the ground up, every 4 or 5 years, I mean, that's all right too. Most shows
Right.
don't need to go like, 7, 8, 10 seasons or whatever the fuck that they go.
Right.
So,
Well, you kind of dodge that problem of jumping the shark after,
right.
5 seasons or so.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a million examples of where even going into like a season 4 could be dangerous for a show,
Right.
or where they do jump the shark. So, yeah. So I'm on with it. I'm excited. I'm glad we're going to have a new Star Wars in the fall, and that'll give you and I, Robin, something to talk about. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's the best part. But
Absolutely.
so anyway, speaking of something else that's coming up, this is probably the biggest. I think it's safe to say this is going to be the biggest Star Wars book of the year. So we'll switch gears here. And that book is Thrawn Alliances by Timothy Zahn, a sequel of sorts to the original Thrawn novel from that came out last year, right, in April. And for me, that's still my top book. I thought Thrawn was such an interesting exploration of the character, and it was very Sherlock Holmesian, which Thrawn has always been, but like that book took it to the next level, and I really like that. So I'm really excited for Thrawn Alliances because we're going to get a team up effectively between Thrawn and Darth Vader.
Right.
And how could you go wrong with that?
Right.
That's something we would have loved, especially like 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, I guess 25 years ago. Back when Thrawn was super hot, even though I think he's definitely one of the hottest things going in Star Wars right now.
Has been for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't mind saying it, as long as we can include characters that aren't yet in the movies. I mean, Thrawn is probably my top character, next to like Princess Leia or something. I mean,
right.
He's so cool. But now there was an interesting story. And you actually brought this up. There was an interesting story that there's a tie-in with what Disney is building at Disney World and I guess Disneyland at both of those places. There's going to be a tie-in with something happening in Thrawn Alliances. Do you have the details on that?
Yeah, so apparently one of the locations in the book Thrawn Alliances, a planet called Batu, is actually the in-universe location of where these theme parks are supposed to be. So like when you go to this theme park, it's like you're actually going to another planet. And this planet Batu is where you're going.
Okay. And so now, did they say if it's like a major part of the book?
They didn't really kind of specify as whether it's a major element, but we do know that, this is that the sort of this region of space, where wild space, and it's kind of on the edge of the unknown regions, is going to play insignificantly with the book and supposedly with this park too. So, sure. I mean, it's kind of the impression that I'm getting is it's kind of like this gateway world.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is, at first blush, so Galaxy's Edge is what they're calling the theme park aspect of this.
Right.
And that this planet will be a part of. At first blush, like, this is great because talk about blurring the fucking lines between, reality and the fiction that we consume, to where there is this connection, At the same time, I've been sitting down and thinking more about the whole concept of Galaxy's Edge itself. And I don't know how this is going to work. I really, did you ever go to, there was the Las Vegas experience for Star Trek at the Hilton. Did you ever hit that?
Yeah. I actually went there the last year that they were still up.
Right. Yeah. So did you see like Borg 40 and all that stuff?
Yeah. I went through the whole Star Trek experience, and they have the actors and Klingons and Borg wandering around, and you can go to Quark's bar.
Yeah, you're going around like the promenade.
Right.
And so, yeah, I went to it too. How did you feel about that? Because that, well, I mean, I'll let you tell me how you felt about it.
I mean, I thought it was interesting.
Sure.
It does like immerse you to a certain degree, but at the same level, like same you realize this is not real. You're not actually, in the Star Trek universe. But at the same time, it's kind of like uh, as close as you're going to get,
Right.
in terms of aside from maybe virtual reality.
Yeah, which I mean, certainly Disney is banking on that as well, and we talked about that. You
Right.
experienced some of that.
Right.
Talked about in a previous Star Wars update. Um, yeah, I'm feeling because like for after I sort of sat down about this, thinking about Galaxy's Edge, and I was thinking about the Star Trek experience, which I enjoyed overall, but like you kind of realize you can't exactly because Galaxy's Edge, you're supposed to be like you go in there, or these are the claims anyway from Disney, is you go in there and you're in Star Wars. Like you might as well just pretend you're in the Star Wars universe or something,
Right.
and you go forward. Star Trek: The Experience tried to do that as well. The thing is that like I came to the realization, like it just felt kind of weird after I would go to it, and you come to the realization that you're not actually doing shit that people in the 24th century or whatever
Right.
do,
Right.
and so because of that, like you kind of can't fall into character because you don't have like a common frame of reference with a lot
Yeah.
of the people there,
There
and so
there is kind of like a hard wall there.
right,
And this is actually, it's kind of interesting you bring this up because it's something that I used to be engaged in back in my high school years and after high school was the Renaissance Fair.
oh
And
sure,
so you have a same sort of thing where like if you are, working at the Renaissance Fair, you're in character all the time. But the people that are coming to the Renaissance Fair, we call them the normies. They're dressed in their regular, 20th
right,
century clothing, 21st century clothing now,
yeah,
and it does, like when you see just regular people walking around, it does kind of like break the immersion a little.
yeah,
And we used to poke fun at people sometimes saying, "Oh, what are these?" If they were wearing glasses like you're wearing, "Oh, what are these things on your face? This is strange or some kind of witchcraft."
sure. Yeah, no, yeah, I can totally see that. And so this is going to be, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to work. I mean, I think trying to include so that like one of the cool things when you brought the story to my attention about how Thrawn Alliance is going to mention stuff that's a big part of Galaxy's Edge. Like I felt I was like, okay, so if people at least read the novel, maybe we would have that common frame of reference of shit that we could talk about that happened there or
Hmm.
something, and
Right.
that could get interesting. I mean, VR is really virtual reality is really the solution for this because that way you can
Right.
go through actual missions and then you do have shit to talk about with other people. Like, oh
Right.
yeah, we went through Ord Mantell or whatever, and
because
did this
because
business.
because the only other option is, and I think it'd be cool if they did this, but I don't think they actually would be if they had a day for Galaxy Edge where they only let people who are cosplaying in authentic Star Wars costumes into the
Yeah,
park, that area of the park. That would be really cool, but I don't think they would actually do that.
yeah, no, I agree. Like those kind of like serious fan days
Right.
would be pretty awesome. Hell, if they did like a whole week, I mean, I'd be on board. But I mean, but how do you feel about this overall? Like the connection with Ron Alliances and Galaxy's Edge overall. I mean, are you
I mean,
excited
I,
about
I
it?
think it's an interesting gimmick, but it's I mean that's about it. It is again another marketing ploy
Sure.
to a certain degree. Um, and I don't know which way the marketing was moving, whether or not they decided to make this park and create the world that they were going to create for this park, and then went to Zahn and say, hey, write this into your book, or whether it was the other way around and they say, hey, we've got this book and this planet, why don't we base it off of that?
Right.
It'd be kind of interesting to know, like I said, which way that was going.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. I mean, there's something to be said in the fact that this planet is like at the edge of wild space, which is now actually there's a kids book series that is, I guess, canon. I mean, it's done by Disney since Disney bought Star Wars. That's all about like wild space, which is sort of
Yeah.
like the unknown regions, but not exactly.
Right.
And I love that these kind of Wild West areas exist within Star Wars. It's one of the things that will allow it to have or keep it vital, I think, going forward, because there's places where you don't know about it, and so you
Right.
got to find out what's going on. But like I like that, and because it's attached to wild space, you kind of get the sense that it allows for where you could do things that you could think is canon, and because it's so far away from, say, the core worlds, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
So they're doing a lot of this very right. I really
Yeah.
do, and including, injecting this stuff into major novels. And I think Thrawn Alliance is going to be the biggest book of the year. So to include it in that is probably one of the best ways to guarantee people are going to know what the fuck this is.
Right.
So
well, here again, like I was saying, right, like I agree with you that they're doing this right, because from what I've heard, it definitely sounds like in universe it's a gateway world from like the Star Wars universe we know into sort of the unknown parts of Star Wars universe, and then out of universe it's also a gateway from our world into the Star Wars universe. So having that kind of like overlapping, I think, is interesting, and I think that if they do it right, it'll pull off really well.
Yeah, no, I agree, and yeah, I'm interested. I'm definitely going to Galaxy's Edge. When it opens, I will be. I'll certainly be checking it out. And I know
be a madhouse.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, maybe I'll go over to like the Avatar theme park for a little while, because I can't. All right, I can't believe that there's going to be that many people to justify a fucking Avatar theme park. I don't care how good these movies are that Cameron's making.
I'm telling you. Well, I mean, I grew up and have lived around a Disney park for most of my life.
Sure.
And anytime Disney does anything, and in that park that's new, people go nuts for it. I remember when they converted the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride into the Finding Nemo ride. And it really, all they did was take the same ride and add some, Finding Nemo characters into the underwater scenes and stuff like that. And it really wasn't that spectacular. But I remember that, and I was there shortly after it opened, and the lines for that ride were just insane. I mean, people waiting for, 5-6 hours just to go on a, 15-20 minute ride.
Well, then maybe Avatar can pull it off. So
yeah, I mean, whether or not it sticks around for a while is another thing, because they tear down and put up new rides all the time. So
well, I imagine it'd be easy to convert that kind of ride into like a Star Wars, just expand Galaxy's Edge into something somehow.
Well, it's like they're doing that right now over here in Anaheim. They had the Tower of Terror, which is a Twilight Zone ride. Right. And that was kind of the big attraction when they opened up the Disney California Adventure Park, which is adjacent to Disneyland. Okay. And now they're tearing that down and turning it into an Avengers ride of some sort. I think it's kind of silly, but whatever.
Yeah, I remember the Tower of Terror ride. That was awesome. Like the holograms and everything. Like the first, like the ride itself was fairly standard fare, but like the introduction that you're going through before you start doing the up and down in the tower.
Yeah, and that's really something cool. Disney always does really well. I mean, going all the way back to, oddly enough, Star Tours, that kind of experience that you get just waiting in line, and you're kind of in the spacecraft hangar where they're working on the shuttle and everything. And, you have R2-D2 and C-3PO out there, and they're fully animatronic, characters. I mean, that was really cool. And it totally immerses you.
Yeah. So they've got the right stuff. Yeah. So I'm hopeful for Galaxy's Edge. I think it's going to be. I mean, I still feel weird about it, but we'll see. I don't think. I mean, they've certainly taken baby steps in this direction with things, but I don't think anyone's really tried full immersion. Not even like the Star Trek experience. But maybe this will pull it off.
Right. Well, I mean, really, when it comes to crafting sort of these in real world physical experiences. I mean, as many criticisms I have about Disney and their parks and stuff like that, the people the Imagineers, as they call them, they're absolutely brilliant people.
Yes.
I mean, for sure. Some of them are really out there, but they are just geniuses.
Yeah, no, they're definitely thinking like on another level. I totally agree with you on that. So, all right. You want to shift gears off of this one?
Sure.
All right. Why don't we talk, let's talk. I mean, I don't think there's been any bad news yet. We'll save that. but let's talk a little more, or at least what I think is good news. The new Han Solo trailer that dropped in April here. This so what was the runtime on it? A couple of minutes. I mean, this is a full length
Yeah.
trailer.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot better than what we got the day after the Super Bowl.
Right.
And I watched this trailer and suddenly I got excited. Like I was like, because before I was just thinking like, yeah, like the really sad part about this whole Solo movie is, I'm not excited about it. And I should never say that about anything Star Wars. And I think I might have said that on a previous Star Wars update. But after watching this trailer, I was like, yeah, no, that was really good. Like I'm looking forward to seeing this. I mean, what was your take?
I was kind of, I actually liked the Super Bowl trailer a little bit more than you did,
sure.
But I'm now even more so. But at the same time, I'm trying to, temper my expectations to a certain degree, because I know how good Disney is at making trailers and then not delivering on them. So
yeah, that's going to lead into our next story, but we'll wait on that.
Right.
So, yeah, exactly.
But no, it was an excellent trailer. And I'm glad that they showed more of Chewie. I think the scenes of him where he's, Han's playing cards and he shows Chewie his cards and just Chewie goes, oh, that was great. I mean, if they have more stuff like that, Chewie's going to steal this movie. It's not going to be Lando. It's going to be Chewie.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Though, like some of the Lando moments were pretty cool. Like I love when Lando's like, yeah, everything you heard about me is true. And, and I thought that was perfect. The Chewie stuff was great. A lot of the other little action sequences and everything that were in it, like just fit a little better. And I don't know, it just led to overall excitement for me. And I was surprised at like how much I enjoyed that fucking trailer, because again, previously, I just wasn't feeling it for anything that I was hearing. And it's not necessarily, I don't think it was because, of the trouble that the production of this movie has had. It was just, I don't know, there just wasn't anything to.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you agree with me, but, way back when they announced this movie, I think, you and I and a lot of people just felt like this was an unnecessary movie.
Yeah. Unnecessary. Which, real quick though, because it's funny, like there's in the old EU, in the old expanded universe, there's a series of books by A.C. Crispin. She did like a Han Solo trilogy. It's not the Brian Daley books from before. And these were easily, next to like the Heir to the Empire trilogy, easily probably my favorite books. So I know an exciting prequel Han Solo story could be told.
Right.
And maybe we're still going to get that. And I think I've heard rumors that they signed Alden Ehrenreich, who's playing Han Solo. They signed him for a trilogy, if I'm not mistaken. Which, I mean, you're going to do that anyway.
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot of that's going to bank on how well this movie does and how well he's received as that character.
Sure, right. So, I mean, but they could do that. And like I said, in novel form, in story form, I've seen it happen where it's really great. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm feeling hopeful now, and I'll have to think a little more about why was I just so damned apathetic about this movie before? I mean, there's a chance still that it could suck. I mean, like
I mean, like I said, Disney is really good at crafting a good trailer and not delivering on the expectations that it builds up. But I share your excitement. I mean, I was already there a little bit earlier, but now I'm just sort of like. I'm getting into it. I'm more enthusiastic about it, but at the same time, like trying, okay, don't overdo it, because you're just I don't want to set myself up for disappointment.
Yeah, exactly. I plan on seeing the movie. They haven't released the tickets yet, right?
I don't think so. I mean, this is one of the criticisms I've had with Disney. Like they just kind of like announced this stuff out of the blue.
Yeah.
I remember when they announced the ticket sales for Last Jedi, and like the email went out like at midnight or something.
Right.
And it was like, I nearly got screwed on getting opening day tickets because I had to take my father to the emergency room that night. And then, I'm on my phone and I get this message and I can't really respond to it because I'm busy.
Yeah, sure. No, right on.
And it's just
that is weird.
Yeah. I in the past usually say, hey, okay, we're gonna start selling tickets on X date, and get ready.
Yeah, well, it's weird too, because like this seems really late in the game. Like I mean, not everything's going to be like episode 1 where tickets were being released like 6 months ahead of time,
right?
But I seem to remember the other movies like at least 2-3 months. Like I think I could pre-order the tickets. But anyway, I was going to say I plan on when those tickets do come out, I'll get my hands on them. And I mean, fortunately, I live in New Hampshire, so it's not, it's not not like California where maybe this would necessarily sell out. But I'm going to be going with Stephanie and Ellen, and they ironically, they both are kind of skittish about Star Wars, if not
right,
not even like it.
right.
Which is really interesting. So
Hey,
it'll
I
be
mean,
fun.
you like what you like, and you know what you know. I mean, like I don't have a problem with people don't like Star Wars. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own thing. People are allowed to like or dislike whatever they want to like or dislike.
Yeah, right. I mean, and granted, like, they love like they're obsessive about Star Trek. So, it's funny that, like, because if they weren't, that I wouldn't let that slide. Like, it's just kind of funny for me. Like, okay, you don't like Star Wars, all right, that's fine. But if they did like Star Trek, I'd be like, well, sorry, this isn't going to work out.
Right.
So, but anyway, but I expect them to kind of keep me in check after they see the movie, and they can tell me like, well, I thought that this was kind of good, because I mean they're both brilliant women, and so I imagine that they'll have some interesting critiques. Maybe I'll record like a special a Star Wars episode with their review of it, and then we'll do ours after the fact.
Yeah, cool. I think you've done reviews with Stephanie in the past, and she does tend to be pretty objective about the movies.
Yeah, she's just she's a great like realist. She'll just she has almost no biases. I mean, it's really
right. I mean, she'll just get down to the heart of the matter and like, okay, yeah. I mean, you've got really good points.
Yeah, exactly. So I look forward to hearing what her and Ellen have to say about it.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so yeah, I'm feeling excited now for Solo, and that's good.
It is.
I'm glad that feeling has come to me because I was actually, ironically, I was sweating the movie. so there it is. Anyway, any other comments you want to make on the new Han Solo trailer?
No, I mean, we pretty much covered most of it. Like I said, I do agree. It was a fantastic trailer. Just
Sure.
Like I said, trying to temper my expectations. I really am rooting for this movie to be good. I want it to be good.
Yeah, same here. I same way. And I hope Alden Ehrenreich does great. I hope everybody just, knocks it out of the park that's involved.
Right.
But yeah, speaking of great trailers, now there was a movie in Tempering Expectations. So back when I used to do the Star Wars update on my own, and this would have been back in 2016, I made a claim after seeing the trailers for Star Wars Rogue One. I said, look, this looks like it could be the greatest Star Wars movie ever, like easy. It wouldn't even be a challenge for what I'm seeing in the trailer. If that's what the movie is, that this is going to be fucking awesome.
And I remember that.
Right. And what ended up happening? The trailer and the movie were not even, I mean, it wasn't even the same scenes. Like there was all gone. It was missing from that.
But the sad thing is like you're watching the movie and it's like, I mean, like you could see that there's a good movie, a really, really like that movie that we wanted is just lying under the surface there.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It is. And I mean, and Rogue One's still a great movie. Like I still love what it is.
Absolutely. I mean, it's still actually one of my favorite of the Disney Star Wars movies.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it really, and it's amazing, speaking of prequels that we maybe didn't feel like Solo, that we didn't feel was necessary. I mean, it's amazing just how quickly everybody, myself included, was just like, oh yeah, I want to know this. I want to know this story. Yeah. Which credit to John Knoll for coming up with it in the first place.
I mean, and I love John Knoll. I mean, that guy is so brilliant in just so many different ways, not just as a visual effects artist, but I mean, he helped create Photoshop and
oh sure,
that's provided me with a livelihood for many years. So
right.
I definitely worship at the altar of John Knoll. He's a fantastic human being.
Yeah, I mean, I think he totally deserves his spot in the A New Hope special edition where he's flying one of the X-Wings and he edited himself in. I was like, damn right, man, you go for it. Right. Yeah, well, anyway, so Rogue One, it was recently on a podcast, Tony Gilroy, who now Rogue One, like Solo, had a very, well, there's differing stories, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about here. Had a tumultuous production. Not everything was sunshine and rainbows as it has been seemingly on, say, the more episodic sequels that have been out. And at a certain point with Rogue One, originally being directed by Gareth Edwards, they bring in Tony Gilroy to, and again, there's differing claims on what exactly Tony Gilroy did. You have Gareth Edwards telling one story, you have Kathleen Kennedy telling another story, and now we have Tony Gilroy finally coming out just recently on a podcast with his story of what happened. And well, you listened to this podcast, so did I. There's a link in the show notes for people to check it out if they want to read more direct terms on everything that was said. Actually, I'm going to read a little bit from I got the story here from IO9. I'm going to read a little bit of that, and then we can
Sure.
break down what's here. So Tony Gilroy here is talking on this podcast. He said, I quote, "I have to be careful. I don't know what the statute of limitations is. I've never done an interview about Rogue One ever," end quote, until now. Officially, Gilroy, an Oscar-nominated writer and director, is only credited with co-writing the #1 film of 2016, Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. However, almost everyone knows the truth of the situation. He wasn't just a writer. Gilroy was called in late in the process to lead an extensive set of reshoots that reshaped the entire movie. He hasn't talked about his work on the film since its release, but during an interview on the Moment with Brian Koppelman podcast, he finally offered up a few details. The conversation, which you can listen began when Gilroy innocently brought up Rogue One to answer a question about theme, which led to a discussion of the film. Gilroy was very careful not to directly confirm the host's and everyone's assumption about how large his role was on the film, but he still had plenty to say. Quote, "You'll understand this better than anything else, and I know you have a lot of geeks who listen. I came in after the director's cut. I have a screenplay credit in the arbitration that was easily won," said Gilroy. To explain, by the time a director has finished his or her first cut of a film, the screenplay should have been more or less set in stone for quite some time, especially in regards to its authorship. So to get an quote-unquote easily won screenplay at that late stage means significant changes were made, changes that Gilroy admits he was easily able to make because he really doesn't care about Star Wars. And I want to read that quote because like that part, well, if you listen to the podcast, you'll kind of, you won't feel good about it. Quote, "That was my superpower," Gilroy said. "I've never been interested in Star Wars ever, so I had no reverence for it whatsoever. I was unafraid about that, and they were in such a swamp. They were in so much terrible, terrible trouble that all you could do was improve their position," end quote. So
yeah, and if you actually listen to the podcast, he that's not, I mean, he says that, but he actually starts out by saying that he hates Star Wars, and then he corrects himself and says,
right.
"Well, I don't hate it, but I just never really was into it." And I'm kind of, I think you just told us how you really feel.
Yeah. I mean, and the comment of, and that's the thing, like his whole attitude, his whole tone when he's talking about it. I mean, he just sounds like such a fucking asshole the whole time.
Yeah.
And
it's very smug and self-congratulatory.
Right. Yeah, I mean, which, granted, I guess if he was to look at a metric, he can feel good about what he did because it was the biggest movie of 2016, easy. But at the same time, like, what the fuck did you do, man? And
yeah.
And this, so there's problems here because, again, what he's laying out, and there's a lot more. I mean, he talks about it for a good distance. What he's laying out here really does contradict a lot of what Disney was officially saying. And again, what Gareth Edwards and Kathleen Kennedy were saying about the production. But I got to say, a part of me believes Gilroy's story more so because, again, like we just mentioned, a few minutes ago, the trailer was vastly different from the film that we ended up getting. And we know from Ben Mendelsohn, who played Krennic in Rogue One, he said there was like 4 different takes for each scene. He says there's like 4 different movies. There's 4 different versions of Rogue One out there effectively.
Right.
And that sounds a lot closer to Gilroy's story than it does to, Disney's story on all this. I mean, what are you thinking, Robin?
Well, first, something I want to like rewind a little bit and go back to something that he said, and that he came in after the director's cut. So this does confirm to us that there is a Gareth Edwards cut the movie that exists.
Right. Good point.
So there may be, you could probably construct many different movies in the editing bay, through all the footage they've shot. But Gareth Edwards did have his cut of the movie, and it's there.
Sure.
Whether or not we'll ever see it or it'll make the light of day, I kind of doubt it. But this just kind of, continues to spark my interest in seeing his cut of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, because one of the main things I want to see that badass Jin or so.
And I
You know,
was just going to bring that up, and
yeah,
that's we talk about, we can go through and talk about the differences we saw in the trailer, and one of the biggest differences is obviously the changes to Jyn Erso, and I don't think they were really favorable to her character. The changes
sure.
that were made, I think it would have been a stronger movie had we gone with Edward's depiction of the character.
Yeah, and when I listened to Gilroy talk about this, like and when he made it clear that he doesn't like Star Wars and he has no interest in it, I think what he didn't go and watch the movies or anything. He probably he went to Google and said, okay, what did people think of Force Awakens, which was the Star Wars movie before this? And I think what happened is he saw the critiques of Rey, the character of Rey being a Mary Sue, which isn't true, but that kind of criticism, and he's like, okay, I gotta clean this up, I gotta fix this what he claims to be a terrible mess. I mean, whether or not it actually was, that's another story. What Gareth Edwards considers a mess and what Disney execs consider a mess could be two very different things. And I think he probably said, oh, I gotta weaken the female character, otherwise there's going to be riots in the streets.
Well, I mean, just look at his history. I mean, this is pretty much the mind behind the Bourne movies. And those are very sort of male centric action movies.
Good point.
And the female characters in them tend to be damsel in distress sort of characters.
Yep. Yeah, excellent point. Yeah, you get like one semi-strong character in the Bourne movies, and that's the Bourne's
right.
like
and as so far as the production being a mess, the Star Wars A New Hope, the production was a terrible mess. I mean, if it wasn't for Alan Ladd Jr., the studio would have stepped in and probably completely trashed the movie.
Right.
And I think if they were going to bring somebody in to work on this movie, they just picked the wrong person. If I had my pick, I would have brought in somebody like Alan Heinberg, who wrote the screenplay for Wonder Woman.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, good call. Yeah, I mean, this is the weird thing is that, wait a minute. So, like, I completely believe, and because, I mean, you can't hide it in the way he's talking. I completely believe that Gilroy does not like Star Wars. What's Disney doing bringing this guy in? Like, I mean, that just seems the dumbest decision in the world.
I here again, I'm seeing the tendrils of Bob Iger slithering through.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, and people, this is pure speculation on my point. Don't take this as gospel on my part. This is just my opinion. And if you like Bob Iger, and I understand he is a brilliant businessman.
Sure, he's making money.
Yeah, he's got the record to back it up. So, but as so far as whether or not he actually gets Star Wars, I don't really necessarily think that he does. And I also, how do I put this? I get the strong impression that he's to a certain degree micromanaging the franchise.
Sure.
Kathleen Kennedy is trying her best to be the head of the company, and I just get this feeling that Bob Iger comes in over her head and starts futzing with these productions.
Yeah, this kind of leads me to a side question that I want to ask. Kind of a rumor mill started just because this guy appeared on the Star Wars show on YouTube. What do you think about Kevin Feige taking over Star Wars? You think that's a possibility?
Maybe. I mean, I don't see that happening until they wrap up the next Avengers movie.
Right, the phase 3.
I think, I think he's got his hands full of that. Maybe at that point he says, okay, I've done enough to establish, this franchise and its place in history. I can go do something
Marvel's
else.
on autopilot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't certainly, if I heard the news tomorrow that Kevin Feige is going to take over Star Wars, with all due respect to Kathleen Kennedy, I don't necessarily have a beef with her, but I would be like, fuck yeah, like, all right, I'd be excited as hell because I feel like Feige's one of us. Like he's an actual nerd.
Yeah, he's
like
a sweetie.
Yeah. So, I mean, would you be excited about it? How would you feel if they said Feige?
I mean, I don't know. I enjoy the Marvel movies to a certain degree. They're good. They're entertaining, but they're not certainly I don't think any of the Marvel movies have kind of reached the heights that the Star Wars franchise has.
No, I agree, and I don't think that they're the same quality of film. But
No.
of course, a lot of that could have to do with, George Lucas just did whatever the fuck he wanted. As to where the Marvel films are,
Yeah,
I think, on a very
yeah.
short leash
I
as far
think
as what they can do.
that's a big thing that's kind of missing in Star Wars these days is sort of that maverick attitude.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because people forget, like, the prequels are the biggest independent films of all time. I mean,
Yeah,
like
and the only place that's happening really is like we talked about with Dave Filoni and the animation, and I think to a certain degree that flies under the radar because there's not as much risk involved for
right,
Disney.
right, and you can get away with it on TV. I mean, TV has kind of a history of, like, uh great stuff, kind of artsy stuff getting slipped in without
Right,
people realizing it,
right.
and being subversive. So yeah, I could certainly see that too. I mean, but once again, I mean, in this, look, if this is the trajectory that all this shit is taking, where because, well, like I mentioned earlier, how Stephanie, and Ellen, like, they're not the biggest fans of Star Wars at all. And when they, or especially when Stephanie and I were first talking about it, like, it really made me question, wait a minute, why am I into Star Wars? Like, because Stephanie's so fucking rational,
Right.
you don't want to really question her on anything. And I realized, I came to the conclusion that what made Star Wars great for me, what, like, really sunk it into my heart, was everything outside of the movies, actually, like the video games and the Thrawn novels and
Right.
Shadows of the Empire and the toy
Role-playing games.
yeah, and the role-playing games, exactly. All of that is what made Star Wars alive. I mean,
Right.
and it's tough to, like, chew on that fact, but it's there. And honestly, if that's how things end up under Disney, where, like, the great shit is not happening necessarily in the films and it's happening in the TV shows and the comics and the books and all that, well, then so be it. It won't be any different than it was 20 years ago, and I'll live with it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I mean, I think I mentioned this in a previous Star Wars update. There's so much Star Wars content already in existence that there's plenty for anybody to find something that they enjoy in it.
right.
And I know what I enjoy about Star Wars, and nobody can take that away from me.
Yeah.
I can continue to enjoy those things. I can continue to participate in those things with other people. So yeah, I mean, like, I don't see, like, people who complain about, this or that movie or this, piece of content ruining Star Wars. I think that's just ridiculous nonsense.
No, I agree. I mean, I could build a whole universe around the game TIE Fighter.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
that's
And
enough
be
for
right
me.
there with you.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think a lot of people would be, because it's that amazing. Like, I mean, and that's all I would need. So yeah, I agree with your sentiment, like, all the way. You can't ruin Star Wars. Just like I don't think you could ruin Star Trek. There's a lot of these ones, they're so big and there's so much out there. It really can all coexist, so anyway. Yeah, any other thoughts on what Tony Gilroy had to say, other than being an ass?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of sums up. And like I said, I just again, I would really love to see Garrett's cut of the movie, even if it's not a good movie. I still want to see it.
Yeah.
I mean,
and if it's not a good movie, that would just make us love Rogue One all the more. And
Right,
then we'd be like,
right.
well, good thing you brought in Gilroy. I mean,
Right.
like, it would prove his point.
And not only that, I mean, another big thing that I know, one of our friends is into is, fan eds movies.
Yeah.
So if you were to say somehow, like, take all the footage from, the Gareth Edwards cut and then, the Gilroy cut and make something new out of it, I mean, that's I love that kind of stuff. That's excellent form of fan, participatory culture.
Yeah, I'll take a super version of that film, like a super cut. I'm all for that. I love the Dune super cuts.
Yep.
I'll take one.
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the more the merrier. So, all right. Yeah. I mean, and same here. I don't really have anything else to add other than it just keeps, something that I've been wrong about movies before, where, like, in fact, I remember, boy, it was this 98, 99 when Battlefield Earth came out. And I know there's a collective sigh that everybody just had, but the movie Battlefield Earth, like, people got to understand the book Battlefield Earth by, yes, L. Ron Hubbard. I know, no one has to say anything, but that book is brilliant. It is awesome. It is huge. It's epic. I mean, on the scale of Dune in a very real sense. I mean, like, the book is phenomenal. And I remember when the movie was coming out, it was like my birthday movie, and of course my birthday movie this time around will be Solo, which is nice. Or, it's around my birthday. And like I said, look, if it's only a quarter like the book, if it's only a quarter of what was on the pages of the actual book of Battlefield Earth, this movie is going to be one of the greatest things ever made. And I guess this had to be 99 or 2000 because the guy from episode 1 got the job for it. And the movie was fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Like it was so bad. And it's still so bad. Like there's no reassessment to be made of that film. It's fucking shit. So I've been wrong about movies before, but I'm still feeling like the sting of how wrong I was about Rogue One, or at least what I was expecting, like the level that it could have been at. Not that it wasn't great, but it could have been the best.
Right.
And,
well, I mean, that's the thing that really stings about it to me. Like I said before, is that you could sense that greatness just underneath the surface of what we got. Like it could have been what we wanted, and you could see the signs of it, and it kind of, it does bubble up and through its flaws from time to time, and you do get a great moments in this movie, but you do get that sense that it could have just been so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, well, let's shift gears again, go on to our next bit. We've got, so this is a kind of a new tradition that we're doing, and it's fan production of the month. So, and this will be where we talk about something like something that fans are making for Star Wars that is really, really cool, and that, and that you can check out. Robin actually started this last month. He brought it on, and I thought that was so cool. I was like, well, we'll make it kind of a regular segment to bring on. And this month I've got mine. Some months we'll do it maybe where we both have one. But we can get into this and what it is, the fan production of the month this month. And there's a link in the show notes if you want to buy it. It's not available on the torrent sites. I purchased it myself as well. And it's a band called Galactic Empire. And it's their self-titled album. So the album is also called Galactic Empire. Now, they do have a second album coming out on May the 4th, of course, Star Wars Day, this year in 2018. But this album, man, it's what it is. It's instrumental metal. They took all the classic or some of the classic Star Wars themes and, they just made metal versions of it. Not a new thing. I mean, you can go down the list of Metallica, Within Temptation, a bunch of different bands that have performed like the Imperial March with electric guitar and all this other stuff. And there's certainly plenty of people on YouTube doing it. But I've got to say, with all of that history of taking Star Wars themes and putting them to electric guitar, this is easily the best I've heard. Like, I think this blows away what Metallica did. I think it blows away what Within Temptation did. I think it's phenomenal. And I mean, you've got a who's who here. Of course, the Star Wars theme is there. The Imperial March is there. But then they get into Duel of Fates, the Force theme, Yoda's theme, and the asteroid field, which you'd think was like, wait, the asteroid field? What the fuck's that? As soon as you hear it, and as soon as the electric guitar starts going, you get the drums and everything hitting, it's one of the best tracks on the fucking album. I mean, it's really, really solid. And you get Across the Stars. I mean, there's it's a who's who, it's the greatest hits of Star Wars, really, just put to metal. So, Robin, what did you think of this, man?
Oh, I love this album. It's great. It actually harkens back to, again, one of those golden eras of Star Wars video games. And I think I can't remember if it was Force Commander or one of the other Star Wars strategy games, but they kind of had some sort of metal riff.
It was Force Commander.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and this was just kind of that turned up to 11. It was really good. In fact, they even did a version of actually one of, well, we'll get to it, but I mean, it really, they picked some of the cream of the crop of Star Wars musical compositions and, redid them in a heavy metal style. Really good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, from the prequels, the whole thing. I don't think there's anything here that was from like the sequel trilogy, but maybe they're saving that for a future album. And right. Like, I'm fine with that. I did pre-order the second album, but I don't recall if there was a track list yet for what was going to be on that. But yeah, I thought this was solid. And again, I mean, I really feel like this is the best rendition I've heard of Star Wars music put to metal that's just ever been done, and that's saying something because there's a long history of that. And yeah, there's really, I think there's something for everybody because Star Wars music does run a pretty broad spectrum of I mean, Across the Stars is a beautiful love theme. The Duel of Fates, I mean, I don't think you'd think of that necessarily. Wait, how do you put that to metal? But it works. Battle of the Heroes on this from episode 3.
That was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was real. I mean, that's always been a great theme anyway, but to put that to the metal, and I mean it is just phenomenal. I was
Right.
really impressed.
Yeah.
So unless you have any other comments on it, I do want to kind of go to sort of a question. We'll kind of, it melds this time, but normally I'll make them separate segments. But the question of the month, and I think I might have been listening to Rebel Force Radio or something, and they asked this question of each other of what they thought was their favorite Star Wars composition, what was their favorite theme or track, from albums and everything. And I was like, wow, I mean, I've thought about it, but I've never like really thought about it to where I was going to be able to like give a quick definitive answer. I mean, I had an answer right away. But anyway, I think it'd be fun to go over this. And of course, listeners, if you want to share yours, maybe we could cover them in the next Star Wars update. Go ahead and just post them on Patreon underneath the sound, and we could talk about it. But Robin, anyway, I'll go with, do you want me to go first, or you want to go first?
I'll happily go first.
Right,
this is something actually I have thought about before, just because I am so into, motion picture scores and soundtracks and things like that. I mean, I know you are too. You collect them, just as much as I do, and I've been collecting them.
Stupid amounts of money on these things.
Yeah,
Really
I mean,
crazy.
I don't buy too many CDs anymore, but right. I would say more than half of my CD collection, going all the way back, to the '90s and before, is mostly soundtracks.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, real quick, I'll tell you, like the first CDs I ever bought were the special editions, special edition soundtracks of Star Wars that came out, and I didn't even have like a CD player. All I had was a CD-ROM drive on my fucking 486DX computer, and they actually had a 1/8 jack on it, and so I could put it in, and I could just use the little controls right on the CD-ROM drive itself, and I'd have to listen to it through my headphones. But that's how crazy I am. I've always been about soundtracks. But anyway,
yeah,
go ahead,
me too. Rob. Well, like when so I bought the very first like special edition, wasn't like special edition, but box set, collector's box set that they released.
The 4-disc, right?
Yeah, the 4-disc.
Star Wars Anthology. Still one of the best collections of music you can get, because the 4th disc has a bunch of outtakes, has the full version of Lapty Neck. I mean, like, which is stuff you can't get anymore because they took out Lapty Neck and replaced it with Jedi Rocks in Return of the Jedi. But yeah, that's a beautiful collection.
Anyway. I still have that, and it's one of my prized possessions.
Sure.
But so far as my my favorite composition in the Star Wars saga, it has been for very long, and still is the piece from the Empire Strikes Back soundtrack of the Asteroid Field. Yeah, which is one of the things on the Galactic Empire album. And that's what I was going to say. That was a phenomenal rendition of that track, and it kind of bled like the blending of the sort of orchestral science fiction themes in with heavy metal, and I could swear I almost heard the Dune theme that track. Okay. And it was like, oh my God, this is so, I mean, like, and I almost feel like this is like, should be a genre unto itself, sort of like science fiction metal. Yeah, sure. Fuck yes, it should be. No, I love that. That's a brilliant idea. Yeah, but go back and listen to the Galactic Empire Asteroid Field track again. And I swear to God, there's a portion in that track that sounds exactly like the Dune theme. And it blew my mind. I was like, oh, this is so good. Yeah, I mean, a couple points. One, that was a surprise track for me on that album. I was like, wow, because I don't know, I just never really, I know the theme, I know the composition very well, but I just didn't think about it. Like it doesn't come up in my mind of, all right, what Star Wars music do I want to listen to today? Oh, I'll listen to the Asteroid Field. And then when it was on the Galactic Empire album, I was like, oh fuck, this is like the best thing on here. Yeah. I mean, and my love for this song goes way back to like again the 90s. If you remember Super Empire Strikes Back, the Asteroid Field theme was actually like the music that comes up when you start the game. Right, and it was Super Nintendo. That is like one of the best pieces of 16-bit music you will ever hear. No, you're absolutely right. Wow. Yeah. No, good call. I'm just thinking about that now, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was great. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So second point I want to bring up quick, science fiction metal. If anyone actually wants to check out something like this, there's a band, it's kind of a side project called Star One.
and it's by the guy that started Arion, the band Arion. I'm trying to think of his name. It's something like Arjun Lucassen or something like that. I can't even really pronounce it. But anyway, like in that, they're all of the songs, it's all metal, and all of the songs, they have like 2 albums and 1 live album. All of the songs are, they're not, they didn't take themes from the movies, but they are songs about the movies. Like there's a song called Sand Rider, which is about Dune. And the best one is a song called oh shit, is it Eye of Ra? But anyway, it's about Stargate. But if people want to check out some science fiction metal, that's as good as it gets.
I'll have to check that out. And there's been a history. I mean, like here again, it's kind of a niche sort of genre. But I remember like back in the day, Hawkwind did a theme CD, a theme album based on the Elric of Melbourne series by what's his name? I can't remember the author's name.
I know what you're talking about, though.
Yeah. But I mean, that was just such a fantastically awesome theme album by a great band.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, or even hell, go Rush's 2112. I mean, like,
right?
Like there's science fiction stories that get told in metal, or there's the band Iron Savior, which every album is like this whole story about the ship called the Iron Savior. I mean, like it should be a genre. You're right. Like it should be something, and including, stuff like Galactic Empire, where they take themes, from these movies and just put them to metal. And
I mean, you even have the band Dune, which, I mean, that's where they got their name from, was from the book. And they have several songs, that are based on, events and stuff from the books.
Yeah. I mean, well, like one of the album's names is Spice Opera, right?
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Good call. Yeah. So, all right. Well, here, I'll give you the chance. Do you want to, I mean, I can give my number 1, but do you have like a number 2 and a number 3 as far as compositions in Star Wars, your favorite ones?
I remember how excited I was to get the episode 1 soundtrack.
Yeah.
Before it even came. I mean, like, this is actually something that I lined up in front of Tower Records, before the store opened, just to get that. And listening to Duel of the Fates for the first time was just, I mean, like, nothing can top that.
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, and people don't get it. Like, that was huge. They made a music video for it that got played on MTV pretty endlessly. I mean, Duel of Fates was massive. I really liked, a couple of years after episode 1 came out, they released an ultimate edition of the soundtrack, which was like a 2 or 3 disc, and they actually put in the music video version of Duel of the Fates, where it has like Maul saying throughout it, "Fear is my ally," and Qui-Gon talking and everything. And I love listening to that edition every once in a while. Certainly. So yeah, Duel of Fates, I'm with you. That's definitely a high note. I myself, so I love Across the Stars. Like, I really think, if episode 2 had anything, it had a fucking amazing soundtrack. That I don't think gets enough credit, but I gotta go with, because it's, in fact, if there was like a history of what I listened to, like how many, like on Google Play Music or something, it says how many times you listen to a track. If there's a history of something like that, probably the most listened to track off of Star Wars soundtracks for me was Luke and Leia off of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And that's a theme that surprisingly hasn't been recycled much, but it's stunning. And I mean, part of it, maybe the reason that it doesn't get recycled much is it's all string. Like, I mean, you can't really bring in a full orchestra. I'm kind of hoping Empire is going to try and do it anyway.
It's interesting you mentioned it, because I that is kind of an element that I feel is missing from the sequel soundtracks. Just sort of the softer tone string compositions.
Yeah, no, right, because John Williams seemed to used to be really big on that. Like, even like with Princess Leia's theme, that starts off very I mean, Rey's theme is kind of subdued, but it's using different instrumentation.
Yeah, and it just for some reason it doesn't, kind of evoke that really emotional response that you get to those the tracks you did for the original trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, and granted, like the Luke and Leia track is kind of a what they would call a suite version of it, SUITE, because you never hear it fully composed within Return of the Jedi itself. But it's just a heart-wrenching bit of business. Maybe the second track that I would have listened to the most after that is also off of Return of the Jedi, where it goes from where it's Funeral Pyre for a Jet, or not Funeral Pyre for a Jedi. That's off of episode 1, but it's the Funeral Pyre for Vader, where
Right. Yeah.
the flames kind of go up and they just get this real crescendo that you haven't heard since like A New Hope of
Right.
Luke Skywalker's theme.
Right.
And I absolutely just love that. But Luke and Leia, I've got to give that my top mark as far as that goes. And I mean, everybody, anybody could easily say the Imperial March. I mean, because that is so badass.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's,
I mean,
that's
and granted, that's one of the reasons why I do like the asteroid field theme, because it does start in with the Imperial theme, and it does kind of like this, like honestly, just one of the best action sequence pieces of music for an action sequence that I've ever heard. Period. In any movie.
Yeah, I agree completely. I really do. If I were to cheat, I'll tell you something that I listen to over and over again still is the trailer music. And not that you can get this on a soundtrack. I think I ripped it from some YouTube video. The trailer music from The Force Awakens, when they had that first major trailer.
Oh, yeah.
And when they go like into that full like choral, where there's a whole chorus and everything, and then they're like hitting this heavy drum where it's dun, 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 dun. I mean, oh man, the trailer music for Star Wars is always awesome.
And I know. I mean, like in comparison to the soundtrack we got, and here again, Disney building up that expectation and then not following through and not getting that in the actual movie. That for me was a personal big disappointment about The Force Awakens, is that you just had that really strong movie. Like I don't know if I've told this story before on the Star Wars update, but I think I've told you before that I went to Star Wars Celebration when they had it in Anaheim before The Force Awakens came out.
Right.
And that's when they debuted it wasn't the teaser trailer, it was the full on trailer, where at the very end Han says, Chewie, we're home. And they had that soundtrack in there. And I tell you, I am not a spiritual or religious person, but that experience with that many Star Wars fans at that particular time, before we knew, a whole lot about the movie, was just one of the most, I don't know any other way to put it than say a spiritual experience.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, that's no, I can grasp, I think, what you were going through. Because even from home, like, in fact, I remember the trailer where it pretty much, I mean, it wasn't the full on, it was more of the teaser where like you would barely see Boyega in a stormtrooper outfit and all that. Like they were just showing weird clips. And then suddenly the Star Wars theme kicks in and you're just seeing the Millennium Falcon just go straight up, on Jakku. And and like that, like I got goosebumps right now just thinking about it, because that was just so fucking nuts. I was like, oh my God. And and they're masters of this. I mean, the thing is, funny. I mean, we're kind of getting off topic, but no big deal. The funny thing is really The Force Awakens more or less, I mean, yeah, the music wasn't there. Like I really wanted that way they did the Star Wars theme in, or I guess maybe it was more of the Force theme, but that they did in the full trailer of Force Awakens. But The Force Awakens did really deliver on everything the trailer showed. Like I didn't feel like there was any beats missed. I mean, there were scenes like Maz Kanata handing Leia the lightsaber and all that weren't in the movie. Right. But overall, the tone of what you were getting in those trailers absolutely happened, I think.
Yeah, like I said, I was just talking specifically about the music.
Yeah.
And that was the music that was in the trailer kind of set up an expectation that didn't really follow through in the movie, and that was kind of like,
Yeah, no, we're not the only ones. I mean, I remember saying that when I did the review of The Force Awakens on Sovryn Tech, that this was like the first Star Wars soundtrack where I was just like,
right.
I mean, I like it better over time, but still,
Yeah. It was, the first impression was a little underwhelming.
Yeah. And I've heard other Star Wars shows talk about that those soundtracks don't exactly live up. But regardless, so great choice on your part. Like that was out of left field, the asteroid field. I think that's perfect. Anyway, let's see how much time I think we got just a little bit of time.
Sure.
Something I want to get into, and maybe we'll go into a fuller review next month, but I really think it would be beneficial if people would check this book out. There was the book. I mean, thankfully we're getting back to where Disney is releasing at least like a book a month or a novel a month for Star Wars, because like in 2017 there was almost like 2 or 3 a month. It was crazy. And now there's, now we're finally starting to get some releases because it looked pretty empty for a while. But the latest book is a Han Solo and Lando Calrissian adventure, and it's called Star Wars Last Shot by Daniel Jose Older. And this book, now, Robin, you didn't get the chance to get into it yet.
I just started it.
Right. So we'll be covering that more, because I think there's some little hints in it that will point at things that we'll learn, or that will at least be, I don't think a spoiler, but kind of a plot point. Mm-hmm. That'll be in the Solo movie. So I'm going to put out the warning, just that there's only one part of this that is any real kind of spoiler alert. But I will say, like, it did help me get a little excited for the film, because there's the character that we know that's going to be in the movie, in the Solo movie, L337, which is Lando's droid.
Leet.
Yeah, Leet. You get some. I know, it's right. It's perfect. I've done that too. I've used it many times. But anyway, L3, like, this is a cool character. You get some experience with this character in the book, and because I think a lot of people were feeling, oh, this character is like a rehash of K2SO from Rogue One. If it's anything like what we got, what you end up with in the novel of Last Shot, which takes place in like 3 different time frames, which is a very interesting thing as well. I think we, it's a very exciting character here. Here's the spoiler alert that I'll give, that I'll say. So, but it's really not that big of a deal of a spoiler. I just think it's an interesting tidbit, and it kind of broke the rule of that I've been saying, where Star Wars books seem to give you the only interesting information you get out of the book comes in the last chapter. That was not true with this book, and I was glad to see that mold get broken.
That's good.
Yeah. And what it is you find out there's a point where Lando and Han are talking, and they're talking about the Kessel Run. And you find out that, well, while Han may have been flying the ship, he wasn't the owner of the Millennium Falcon at the time. Lando was. So I imagine that's going to get explored in the Solo movie, but that's there. I mean, and it's a very quick shot that they just mention it. I don't think it's a major spoiler at all, really. But there it is. But the main thing I want to mention, like, I really enjoyed this book. And like I said, we'll give a full review next month, but I really enjoyed the hell out of this book. It was a fun adventure going through different time frames, and just having Lando there. I think Lando makes everything work whenever he's around, just like Emperor Palpatine. But there's 2 really cool things in this that I'm really appreciative of. One is, two, there's kind of the same thing. There are 2 characters in this in particular that I found to be really fascinating, that end up helping out in the parts of the story that take place after Return of the Jedi. One is, there's an Ewok hacker named Peekpa that, at first you laugh, right? Like, and there had been news stories talking about this. This was going to be a thing. What did you think of it when you first heard that there's going to be an Ewok hacker around?
So I thought this was really cool. I mean, I like Ewoks, but it is cool on a very personal level, because a character in a Star Wars RPG campaign I ran years ago, a player decided to make an Ewok that was, he wasn't a slicer or a hacker, but he was like, smarter than the average Ewok. He wasn't, sort of technologically, I think he was actually an engineer. So right. To see this concept sort of resurrect, and he actually got the idea out of the West End Games RPG book, because there's a particular image, I think it's in the 2nd edition, where this Ewok is stepping out of an X-Wing pilot seat, and he's got like stormtrooper chest armor, and he's got a blaster in his hand. He's got a little cybernetic eye thing.
Yeah. I remember this.
He's got such as a cool,
like a bounty hunter. Yeah.
It's just a cool. I just thought that was a cool concept back in the day, and to see this come back again, into brought up back again, because nobody really kind of explored that character concept in a fully fleshed character yet. So to see it happen now, that's personally really cool for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, I know there's been a lot of like fan art over the years where like you have Sith Ewoks and all stuff, and it all actually looks really cool. Like, I mean, they look disturbingly vicious when once you give them that kind of air.
Well, I mean, I
And
think you've pointed out before too. I mean, it's like, the Ewoks do kind of have like a disturbing element to me because I mean, like they were about to eat,
Han Solo,
Han Solo and Luke Skywalker. I
yeah, they're
mean,
gonna cook them. Yeah, exactly. They're
they're
vicious.
savage.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of it, is that that's what I loved about this book was with the two characters. There's an Ewok character that's an Ewok hacker, and it works. It's amazing when you read the book, you're like, it becomes believable very quickly and a lot of fun very quickly, which is nice for a Han Solo story and a Lando story to be fun again. And so like I love that because that gets rid of the whole, these things are stupid and cute and cuddly or whatever. No, actually they're brilliant. Like I like that a lot. So I like that. It's not retconning, but just kind of this justice that's been served to this, species.
I don't think it's retconning at all. Like I said, the concept's been out there for decades, literally.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. The other thing is there's a Gungan character in this that ends up joining Han Solo's team. And not that the character is necessarily a badass or something, but it's great that this Gungan character gets to, like, when you start hearing him talk and everything, how to put this? He knows all the stereotypes that people claim about Gungans, and he just rips on them. He's saying, "Oh, you think I'm an idiot? You think I'm, and like all these different things." And it's just tons of fun. And it's like, oh, good. Finally we can get rid of, because we're never going to get rid of Jar Jar. So one of the best things you can do is let's have the Gungans come out as, quasi badasses, or at least get rid of the tropes around them. And I think this book delivered on that. And I just, those 2 points in particular, I mean, there's more to say about the book, but those 2 books in particular, I think were phenomenal. The other part I'm going to leave when we talk about when we've actually read it, because there's this weird subtext. There's this weird storyline that I've talked about.
I think I know what you're going for, because you kind of talked about this before.
Yes,
haven't you?
I have.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say it begins with a D.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay. So we'll save. We won't spoil it. We'll save it. But and this book is the one that really drives that home. That there's some story coming sooner or later about this.
Yeah. I picked up on that pretty quickly, and like I said, there was an interview I read with the author not too long ago. He kind of talks about some of these things, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And the same things that you're sort of, enjoy about this book is the same things that got me really excited about it, and particularly the Ewok and the Gungan character. In fact, I think they even quoted the Gungan character at one point saying, "Don't give me this Misa Yuza crap."
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's what you need to do. Like, let's clean it up. That's the thing. You can, because we're getting new Star Wars. You can make the prequels in a way, like you can kind of fix them. Any of the problems that you had with them, just put in story elements and other stories that shine a new light on what's going on in those movies.
Right.
And so I'm glad for that. That's happened in this book. And I really, this is one of the better Star Wars novels. I don't know if I'd put it in my top 10, but it's close for right now, of being there. I thought it was very enjoyable. It's because I was totally expecting a throwaway novel, and it takes about, when you get halfway in, that's when it starts to feel really good. And granted, that's tough for a novel, but to sit that long, but I think it's worth it.
I've been looking forward to this. I mean, I actually didn't expect it to be a throw novel. And I think you brought this up. We were talking before the show. There is a strong history of well-written Lando books in the Star Wars universe.
This is true. Yeah.
And I think absolutely. Anytime they bring this character into the books, it's something special. And I know, a lot of people were kind of sad that Lando has not shown up in the sequel trilogy, just because he was such a huge part of, say, like the Thrawn trilogy. And he did have a very significant role in that. And it was Timothy Zahn did an excellent job of writing Lando. And I think, like you said, you mentioned some of the past Lando books. They're really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And certainly, because I'll say this, the Lando comic book series that Marvel did, or, that Disney did, whatever, is still the best comic book series, I think, to date.
Yeah, it really is. It seems to be every time they pull out the character, it really is something special.
Yeah. So, if they're making it kind of a rarity, like, okay, I can live with that for now. Right. So, but we'll see what the future holds as far as that. So I think we've been going about an hour.
Yeah.
I think I'm feeling good. I'm excited for Solo finally. and that's an important thing to be feeling. And then we got Thrawn Alliances coming out. Of course, I've been excited for that ever since I didn't even need to see the cover, but the cover sold me. And yeah, I think that's good for this month. And next month, maybe we can also, I mean, we're going to be talking a lot of Solo, but maybe we can catch up on some of the comics as well, because there's interesting things happening there.
Yeah. I mean, I'll
good
just throw
and
it.
bad. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just throw it out there. I mean, we won't do a review of the comics right now, but still, two of the strongest lines that Marvel has right now are both Dr. Aphra and the Darth Vader comic.
Yep.
And so if you guys, if you're looking for recommendations from me personally as to what to go pick up Vader, pick up Dr. Aphra, and keep picking up Thrawn.
Yeah, that Thrawn series is still solid. Oh,
yeah.
we finally saw Governor Price young.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
It was everything I expected. I was like, yeah, she was hot. No.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that was cool. That was really slick. So yeah, I second everything you just recommended. But yeah, we'll delve deeper into the comics next time, because I think May, there's not going to be I don't imagine there's going to be a whole ton of news, because mainly they're just going to want everybody to go see Solo.
Right.
And we'll certainly be talking about that. And I will be doing I'll be doing my own personal full Solo review of Solo. I didn't mean for that to be a pun. But on Sovryn Tech Prime, as is tradition, I'll take half of an entire Sovryn Tech Prime episode and review a Star Wars movie. So I will be doing that as well. But then the only way you're going to find out about what Robin's got to say about it, and like I mentioned, also I'll be taking Stephanie and Ellen to see it, and and what they think about it. You're going to have to be on Patreon. So you're here. We're glad you're here. Anyway, Robin, thanks again, man. This is always tons of fun to hook up with the co-host and talk up some Star Wars, baby.
Absolutely. Love getting sweaty with you.
Yeah, all the time. So all right. So that's it for April 2018 for Patreon. I will see all of you on the other side. And if you want to find more of Robin, just check out everything in the show notes. And if you want to find all kinds of other stuff, go to the show notes. I'll see you on the other side. Woo!